When you think about a company's carbon footprint, what comes to mind? Probably smokestacks, right? But what if I told you the biggest part of that footprint was completely invisible? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden data that's about to reshape sustainable industry as we know it. Okay, so take a look at this. It's kind of shocking, right? For the average company, their direct emissions, the stuff they actually burn and the power they buy, that's only a quarter of the picture. A whopping 75% comes from something else entirely, these indirect, so-called Scope 3 emissions. So what on earth are Scope 3 emissions? Well, the official definition says it's all the indirect emissions in a company's value chain. But let's be real. We're not talking about just one thing here. We're talking about, well, pretty much everything else. It's the carbon footprint of their suppliers, the daily commute of their employees, even what happens to their products after you buy them, the whole shebang. And that's why this analogy is just perfect. Think of Scope 3 as the dark matter of sustainability. We know it's there, and we know it's massive. It literally makes up most of the environmental universe for a company. But it's also invisible, and, you guessed it, incredibly hard to track and measure. But here's the thing. Companies can't just ignore this dark matter anymore. The pressure's on. You've got major global players, the International Sustainability Standards Board, the EU with its new reporting directive, even the SEC in the US, all rolling out new rules. The bottom line is, reporting on these sprawling, complex Scope 3 emissions is no longer a nice-to-have. It's becoming a must-do everywhere. And here's the reality check. Get this. A global survey found that a massive 91%, an overwhelming majority of executives, admit their own companies just aren't measuring this stuff properly. So you've got this huge gap between what regulators are demanding and what businesses can actually do. Which leads to the million-dollar question, right? How in the world can a company possibly manage a problem that they can't even properly measure? Well, the answer, as you might have guessed, is all about data. But not just grabbing any old data. You need a plan, a real blueprint that connects those big, flashy promises made in the boardroom to the thousands of tiny actions happening every single day on the factory floor. Saying you have a net zero goal is one thing. It makes for a great press release. But honestly, it's pretty much meaningless if you don't have a detailed map that connects that big idea to the specific materials, machines, and energy that create emissions second by second. So what does this blueprint for action actually look like? Well, researchers have laid out this 5-step plan. You start high level, defining your goals, then you get specific, translating them into KPIs. But look, the real game changers are steps 3 and 4, creating a digital model of the entire factory and then using it to map and collect exactly the right data. Only then can you actually start making smart decisions. And this is what we're talking about. This is that digital model in action. It's a standardized framework for mapping literally everything. Every material that comes in, every machine, every person, every bit of energy used. Basically, this digital blueprint is like a super detailed living map of the factory, making sure nothing, and I mean nothing, gets missed. Okay, so that's all a bit high level, a little theoretical, right? Let's bring it down to earth. How does this data-first approach actually work in the real world? Let's talk about something we've all dealt with, getting something repaired, and making that whole circular economy idea actually work for once. I mean, think about it. How many times have you just given up on repairing something because the whole process is a total nightmare? You have no idea what it'll cost, how long it'll take, or if it's even worth the hassle. The problem? It all comes down to a lack of good, reliable data up front. Let's take an e-bike battery, for example. The old way, it's a mess, right? You send it off into the void, wait ages for a quote that's probably way too high, and the whole thing is just frustrating. But now, look at the digital platform way. Instantly, you get reliable quotes from different providers, you see competing offers, and you can set up a fast, trusted exchange. And what's the magic ingredient? You guessed it, data. So how does this actually work? Well, this is where the tech gets really cool. The platform creates a digital twin, basically a virtual clone of your battery that's packed with real-time data about its condition. Then, digital agents, which are just smart software programs, act on behalf of you and the repair shops. They negotiate automatically based on your rules for things like price and timing, creating an instant, trusted marketplace. And here's the upshot. When you build the entire system on a solid foundation of data, everybody wins. It's a total game changer. You, the customer, get fast, reliable service. The repair shops can offer good prices without taking on huge risks, and the battery gets a second life instead of ending up as toxic waste. Suddenly, sustainability isn't about making a sacrifice. It's just the smart, easy, and even cheaper choice. It's a win-win-win. Now, this whole e-bike story, it's not really just about batteries or repairs. It's a little window into the future of all sustainable industry, a future that's being written with a completely new digital rulebook. Because this whole shift, it's about so much more than just ticking boxes for regulators. At its core, it's about building smarter, tougher, more resilient businesses. And what's the bedrock for all of that? Data. And when companies get a handle on their data, the advantages are just huge. They can unlock brand new business models like that repair service we just saw. They can become the go-to green supplier for their own customers. They can slash costs by finding hidden inefficiencies. We're talking about a radical transformation, not just a little tweak. So let's wrap up with this final thought. Look, this whole transition to a data-driven, sustainable industry, that's not an if anymore. It's a when. The real question now is which companies will be the pioneers? Who's going to dive into this complexity first and, by doing so, get to write the rules for this new, smarter, and more sustainable economy? The race is on.